The passenger on tonight's train had no ticket, no name, and no record of ever boarding. And the way this story unfolds will teach you 12 English phrases your textbook never could. There is a woman sitting alone on a late-night train. She is watching the dark fields slide past the window. And then, at the next stop, a man boards and sits right next to her.
He is well-dressed, quiet. He looks out the window for a few minutes, and then he turns to her and says, "Something terrible is about to happen."
Then the lights go out.
When they come back on, the seat beside her is empty.
Nobody on that train remembers seeing him, not one person.
And the conductor says there was no stop between the last station and the next one.
That right there is the power of a mystery story. And today, we are going to use one to completely change the way you absorb English.
I'm Emma.
And I'm Alex.
And today is a special episode. We have something a little different for you.
A little atmospheric, maybe.
Just a little. We built an original short mystery story called The Passenger Who Never Existed, and we are going to read it together, stop along the way, and pull out the vocabulary and natural English phrases that are worth knowing.
And before we get into the story itself, let's quickly talk about why this approach works so well for language learning, because there is actual science behind it.
Right. So I have been working through Spanish for a while now, and one thing I noticed early is that I could sit with vocabulary lists for hours and feel like I was making progress. And then someone would tell me a story in Spanish, and I would lose the thread almost immediately.
The emotional load of a story takes up mental space, especially when the language is not fully automatic yet.
Exactly. And researchers have actually looked at this. Stephen Krashen, one of the most influential figures in language acquisition theory, made the argument that we acquire language best when we are absorbing input that is slightly above our current level, but embedded in context we care about.
He called it comprehensible input, the idea being that if the content is engaging, your brain works to close the gap. You reach for meaning, and that reaching is where the learning happens.
Mystery stories are almost perfectly designed for this because they create what is sometimes called an information gap. You do not know what happens next, you want to know, so your brain stays locked in.
I have been studying French for a while, and my tutor once told me to stop doing grammar exercises and read a crime novel instead. And my vocabulary improved faster in 1 month of reading crime fiction than it had in the previous 4 months of grammar drills.
Because you were emotionally invested.
Completely. I needed to know who did it, so I kept reading, and the words stuck because they were attached to tension, not to a list.
There is also something called embodied cognition in linguistics research. The basic idea is that meaning is not just stored as a definition in your head. It is connected to emotional and sensory experience. When you feel something while you are learning a word, that word takes root in a deeper way.
So mystery gives you atmosphere, tension, surprise, and those emotional textures become anchors for the language.
Okay, I think that is enough science for now. Let's get into the story.
Let's do it.
Part 1. The Train.
It was 11:14 in the evening when Clara boarded the last northbound train from Central Station. The platform was nearly deserted. A few stragglers dragged luggage toward the rear cars, but Clara had her usual spot. The third car, window seat on the left, just behind the overhead light that flickered in cold weather.
She had taken this route every Thursday for 3 years, always alone, always with a book she never finished. Tonight, it was a novel about a woman who disappeared in the south of France. She found the irony fitting, though she could not quite say why.
The train pulled away at precisely 11:20. Clara watched the lights of the city blur and fade, replaced by the flat darkness of open fields. She opened her book, read 2 sentences, and then heard the seat beside her compress as someone sat down.
She looked up.
The man was somewhere between 40 and 60, with the kind of face that is hard to remember immediately afterward. Not unpleasant, just unremarkable. He wore a dark coat, slightly damp at the shoulders, as though he'd been caught in rain. He carried no bag.
"Sorry to disturb you," he said. His voice was low and even. Is anyone sitting here?
No, Clara said.
He nodded and settled in, looking straight ahead at the seat back in front of him. Clara went back to her book. A minute passed. Then another.
You're going to Millfield, he asked.
I am, she said, not looking up.
Good, he said. So am I.
Another silence. The train rocked gently. Outside, the darkness pressed against the glass.
Something's going to happen tonight, the man said.
Clara looked up sharply. His expression had not changed. He was still staring at the seat back in front of him. His hands were folded in his lap.
I'm sorry, she said.
At Millfield, he said. Something's going to happen. I thought you should know.
Clara stared at him for a moment. Then she looked back at her book, her pulse quickening slightly, and decided he was simply odd. People on late-night trains often were.
Thank you, she said, because she did not know what else to say.
He nodded once and said nothing more.
All right, let's stop there. How are you feeling? Did you follow it?
I really love that opening section. The atmosphere is so thick and the language is doing so much work.
Let's pull out the key vocabulary. First, deserted. The platform was nearly deserted. This adjective means almost or completely empty of people. You'll hear it often in mystery writing because it carries a slightly eerie tone. It is stronger than just empty. The street was deserted. The building was deserted. It implies an absence that feels a little wrong.
Next, stragglers. A few stragglers dragged luggage toward the rear cars. A straggler is someone who is behind the main group, someone moving slowly or finishing last. You would use this casually too. We were the last stragglers at the party. Or, a few stragglers were still in the office at 9 o'clock.
Then, precisely. The train pulled away at precisely 11:20. This adverb means exactly, with no deviation. It adds a formal, deliberate quality. She arrived at precisely 8. He said precisely what he meant. It suggests control and accuracy.
There's a great construction in the next part. The kind of face that is hard to remember immediately afterward. Notice the pattern, the kind of that. We use this all the time in natural English to describe a type or category. The kind of music that makes you feel something, or the kind of person who always knows what to say. Memorize that pattern. It will make your English sound much more natural.
And connected to that is the word unremarkable. Not unpleasant, just unremarkable. Unremarkable means not unusual or noteworthy in any way. Ordinary in a forgettable sense. An unremarkable afternoon. His clothes were unremarkable. The prefix un reverses the meaning, so unremarkable means not remarkable.
And finally, from this section, pulse quickening. Her pulse quickening slightly. Your pulse is your heartbeat. When it quickens, it speeds up. This is a physical, sensory way to describe anxiety or fear without just saying, she felt scared. Mystery writers love this kind of language, and you can use it too. My pulse quickened when I saw the email. He felt his pulse quicken as he waited for the results.
6 strong words and phrases from part 1 alone. Ready for part 2?
Let's keep going.
Part 2. The stop that wasn't there.
Clara must have drifted off. She did not remember closing her eyes, but when she opened them, the car was darker, and the seat beside her was empty.
She looked around. The overhead light that usually flickered had gone out entirely. A few passengers further down the car sat motionless, apparently asleep.
The train was slowing.
She checked her watch. 11:52. They should not have been arriving for another 20 minutes.
Through the window, she could see nothing but darkness. And then, as the train slowed further, a small, dimly lit platform appeared. No signage, no name, just a concrete slab with a single yellow lamp.
The train stopped. The doors opened. No one got on. No one got off.
Clara leaned into the aisle and looked toward the conductor's compartment. The doors slid shut. The train began to move again.
She got up and walked to the rear of the car, where an older woman was reading a paperback under a personal light.
"Excuse me," Clara said. "Did you see the man who was sitting next to me? Dark coat, no bag."
The woman looked up and blinked. I didn't notice anyone.
Clara moved to the next car. She asked a young man in headphones, who pulled one ear out and shook his head. She asked a couple sharing a thermos of something hot, and they both looked at her with the same blank, slightly concerned expression.
Nobody had seen him.
She made her way to the conductor's door and knocked. A heavy-set man in uniform opened it and regarded her with practiced patience.
Can I help you, miss?
The man who was sitting in my car, seat 14A, dark coat, he got on at some point after Central Station. Do you remember him?
The conductor frowned. There was no stop between Central Station and this one, miss. This is the first stop since departure.
Clara stared at him. But he was sitting right next to me. He told me something was going to happen in Millfield.
The conductor's expression did not change, but something behind his eyes did. Something careful.
I'll check the manifest, he said slowly. But to my knowledge, there were no additional boardings on this route tonight. He closed the door.
Clara stood in the narrow corridor between cars, the train swaying beneath her, and thought about the man's face. She was already having trouble remembering it clearly.
The train pulled into Millfield at 12:09.
On the platform, police tape stretched across the entrance to the parking lot.
Something had already happened.
Okay, I have genuine chills right now.
The language in that section is so packed. Let's go through it.
First, drifted off. Clara must have drifted off. This is a phrasal verb, meaning to fall asleep gradually, without intending to. I drifted off during the documentary. She drifted off before 10 o'clock. It is a much more natural phrase than fell asleep accidentally. Native speakers use it constantly.
Next is motionless. A few passengers sat motionless, apparently asleep. Motionless means completely still, not moving at all. It's stronger and slightly more unsettling than just still. The child stood motionless at the door. The water was motionless. In a mystery context, it adds to the eerie feeling.
Then signage. There was no signage on the platform. Signage is an uncountable noun referring to signs as a group. You do not say, there were no signages. You say, there was no signage. A shop has signage. An airport has signage. This is a word many intermediate learners get wrong with the grammar, so keep that in mind. Uncountable, always singular.
Next is regarded her with practiced patience. Two things to pull apart here. First, regard as a verb means to look at someone with deliberate attention, not a quick glance, a steady observing look. He regarded her carefully before speaking. And practiced patience means patience that has been developed through repetition. A conductor, a nurse, a customer service agent, people who deal with similar situations daily develop practiced patience. It tells you so much about a character in just 2 words.
That phrase is a great example of how efficient good English writing can be.
Exactly. Then there is manifest. He said he would check the manifest. A manifest is an official list, typically of passengers or cargo. The name was not on the manifest. Ships have manifests, planes have them. In everyday language, you might also say it wasn't on the list, but in professional or formal contexts, manifest is the specific term.
And then my favorite moment in this whole section, something behind his eyes did. The conductor's expression did not change, but something behind his eyes did, something careful. This is a beautiful literary construction. The face stays neutral, but the eyes reveal something hidden. Writers use this to plant suspicion without stating it directly. You will see this in literary fiction all the time, as something shifted in her expression, something behind her eyes changed. It is a very natural and vivid way to describe subtle, concealed emotion.
And it is useful for your own writing and speaking. Instead of saying he was suspicious, you can say something shifted behind his eyes. It's so much more specific.
Okay, part 3. Let's close the mystery.
Part 3. What he knew. She did not go home that night.
The incident on the platform involved a car accident. A black sedan had struck a barrier at high speed, and the driver, a man in his 50s, had been taken to hospital in critical condition. The police were calm and efficient and told her it had nothing to do with the train.
She did not argue, but she took down the officer's name and went home, and sat at her kitchen table and opened her laptop.
She searched for the man's description: dark coat, no bag, middle-aged, unremarkable face. Nothing useful came back. She searched for the platform, the unlisted stop. She found a local history article about a decommissioned station called Hartwell Halt, closed in 1987 after a derailment. The tracks still ran through the area. Trains were not supposed to stop there.
She searched for accidents in Millfield. And there, on a local news page dated 3 weeks earlier, she found a photograph.
It was a fundraiser, a community event. 40 or 50 people gathered in a community hall, and in the back row, slightly out of focus but unmistakable to her now that she was looking, was the man from the train.
The caption read, "Local residents gather to oppose the development of the old Hartwell rail corridor."
She stared at the photograph for a long time.
The driver of the sedan, she would later find out, was the lead developer behind the Hartwell project.
Clara never saw the man again. She asked around. She described him. No one at the community group could place him.
But every year, on the third Thursday of November, when she took the 11:20 northbound train, she chose a different seat.
And she always finished her book.
That ending.
It is so quiet, and it lands so hard. Okay, vocabulary from part 3.
First, critical condition. The driver was taken to hospital in critical condition. This is a medical phrase, meaning the patient's life is in serious danger. You hear it in news reports and medical dramas. He remains in critical condition tonight. The opposite is stable condition, meaning the immediate danger has passed.
Next, decommissioned. A decommissioned station. Decommissioned means officially taken out of service after a period of use. You will hear this with military equipment, factories, power plants, old infrastructure. A decommissioned nuclear plant. The decommissioned airfield. It implies something was once operational but has been formally shut down. It sounds more deliberate and official than just closed.
Then derailment. Closed after a derailment. A derailment is when a train comes off its tracks. The verb form is to derail. But this word is also very commonly used as a metaphor. The project was derailed by budget cuts. Our conversation got completely derailed. You will hear it in business settings, in news articles, and in everyday speech. Both the literal and metaphorical uses are important to know.
And unmistakable. Unmistakable to her now that she was looking. Unmistakable means impossible to mistake for something else, instantly and clearly recognizable. Her voice is unmistakable. The smell of coffee is unmistakable. The prefix un reverses mistakable, which means capable of being mistaken or confused, so unmistakable means the opposite, no chance of confusion.
And the last phrase I want to highlight, could place him. No one could place him. To place someone means to recognize them or remember where you know them from. This is a very natural conversational phrase. I know his face, but I can't quite place him. She looked familiar, and I kept trying to place her. You will hear it in everyday conversation all the time.
And one more thing before we move on. Let's talk about the ending for a moment, because the language does something clever there.
She always finished her book.
Right. Earlier in the story, we were told she always carried a book she never finished. That detail comes back at the very end. She finishes her book now. And that small callback does so much. It tells you she changed in some way, though the story does not tell you exactly how.
In literary terms, that is called a callback or a circular structure. And recognizing these patterns is actually a listening and reading comprehension skill. When a small detail returns at the end of a story, it usually carries emotional weight. Training yourself to notice that makes you a much stronger reader in any language.
All right, let's step back and talk about what we actually just did here, because it was not just about enjoying a ghost story.
No, we used narrative to deliver vocabulary in emotional context, and context is everything. Think about the difference between seeing the word deserted on a flashcard versus hearing it in, the platform was nearly deserted. A few stragglers dragged luggage toward the rear cars.
The second version gives you the word wrapped in atmosphere. You feel what deserted means. You don't just know its definition.
And that feeling is the anchor. That is why it sticks.
There is research behind this too. Swain, a Canadian applied linguistics researcher, developed what she called the comprehensible output hypothesis. Her argument was that you truly process and consolidate language when you are pushed to produce it yourself. But before you can produce language, you need rich input.
And mystery stories are extremely rich input. They use physical description, emotional vocabulary, formal and informal registers, varied sentence structures, and real dialogue all at once. You're getting a full exposure, not a filtered one.
There's also the tension element. Mystery writing uses sentence length very deliberately. Short sentences for impact, longer ones to build suspense. That rhythm is excellent for ear training, especially for learners who are used to very regular, uniform sentence structures.
When I was studying French, I noticed that French crime novels used very short sentences for dramatic moments. The door opened. He was not there. And reading that kind of writing trained my ear to hear how sentence length creates effect. The same thing works in English.
And I've been working through Spanish storytelling podcasts, and the retention from those episodes is so much better than from grammar-focused content. Because with a story, you want to know what happens. You're not waiting for it to be over.
That motivation is everything. You're not passive, you're leaning forward.
Okay, let's give you a usable system. How do you actually take a mystery story and turn it into an English learning session?
Step 1, choose your level honestly. If you are intermediate, look for stories written simply. Agatha Christie's shorter mysteries are actually excellent for this. The sentences are clean, the vocabulary is often repeated across chapters, and the plots are tight enough to follow.
If you are upper intermediate or advanced, try something like Ton of French or Michael Connelly. The language is richer and more complex, and it is excellent for building reading fluency.
Step 2, read or listen once without stopping. Do not look up words on the first pass. Let the story carry you. Notice where you lose the thread, but do not interrupt the experience. Your brain needs to process the story as a whole, not as a series of vocabulary problems.
Partial comprehension on the first read is not a failure. It is the starting point.
Step 3, go back and find the words you noticed. Not every unknown word, just the ones that appeared more than once or that felt important to the meaning. Those are the high-value vocabulary items in this context, and those are the ones worth your time.
Step 4. Write each word in a sentence that connects it back to the story. Not a generic sentence. Use the emotional context from the story. The platform was deserted. Her pulse quickened when the seat was empty. You are strengthening the emotional anchor you already built on the first read.
Robert Bjork at UCLA has researched what he calls desirable difficulties, which is the idea that slightly effortful processing leads to better long-term retention. Writing your own sentence is a small, deliberate effort, and that effort pays off in memory.
And step 5, retell the story. Out loud. To yourself, to a language partner, to literally no one. Try to use the words you just learned while you do it.
This is Swain's output hypothesis in practice. When you retell a story, your brain has to reach for the words. That reaching is what consolidates them. You are not just recognizing the vocabulary anymore. You are producing it.
So, the loop is read once for story, go back for vocabulary, write personal sentences, retell out loud. That is 4 steps, and it covers input, noticing, output, and consolidation, which are the 4 pillars of vocabulary acquisition.
And do this with stories you actually find interesting, not because you should, because you want to know what happens. That motivation is the engine of the whole thing.
I want to say one more thing before we wrap up the main discussion, and it is something I think about a lot in my own language learning.
Go ahead.
There is a tendency, especially for serious learners, to feel like if you are enjoying yourself, you are not really studying. Like the enjoyment means it is not rigorous enough.
I had that exact feeling when my French tutor told me to read crime novels. I kept thinking, this is too fun. I should be doing grammar.
And that instinct is wrong. Enjoyment is not a sign that you are not working hard. It is a sign that your brain is fully engaged, and full engagement is exactly the condition you want for learning.
Krashen called it acquisition as opposed to learning. Acquisition happens when you're absorbed, when you're not consciously thinking about rules, when the language is just happening around you and through you.
And mystery stories create that condition better than almost any other format because the tension keeps you in the story. You do not drift. You don't check your phone. You stay in.
So, this week, find a short mystery story. In English if you can. If that feels too hard yet, find one in your own language and then find an English translation. The familiar plot gives you scaffolding. The unfamiliar language becomes something you can reach for because you already know where the story's going.
And listen to this episode again. That is one of the real advantages of podcast learning. You can replay the story section at a slower pace. You can pause after each vocabulary explanation. You can come back tomorrow and it will still be here.
The passenger will still be on that train.
And nobody will still have seen him.
Okay, time for our vocabulary review. Let's go through all the keywords and phrases from today's episode, clearly and with example sentences. You can write these down, replay this section, or come back to it anytime.
12 words and phrases today. Here we go.
Number 1. Deserted. Adjective. Almost or completely empty of people, with a slightly eerie quality. Example. The train station was deserted at midnight.
Number 2. Straggler. Noun. Someone who moves slowly or is behind the main group, often the last to finish or leave. Example, a few stragglers were still finishing the race an hour after everyone else.
Number 3. Precisely. Adverb. Exactly with no deviation or error. Example, she arrived at precisely 9 o'clock, not a minute late.
Number 4. Unremarkable. Adjective. Not unusual or noteworthy. Ordinary in a forgettable way. Example, the apartment was clean, but unremarkable. Nothing that would stand out in your memory.
Number 5. To drift off. Phrasal verb. To fall asleep gradually and without intending to. Example, I drifted off during the documentary and woke up when the credits were rolling.
Number 6. Motionless. Adjective. Completely still, not moving at all. Example, the deer stood motionless at the edge of the road.
Number 7. Signage. Uncountable noun. Signs considered as a group, used to provide information or direction. Remember, always singular. There was no signage, not there were no signages. Example, the museum signage was clear and easy to follow.
Number 8. Manifest. Noun. An official list of passengers or cargo. Example, security checked every name on the manifest before the ship departed.
Number 9. Decommissioned. Adjective or past participle. Officially taken out of service after a period of use. Example, the old lighthouse had been decommissioned decades ago and left to the weather.
Number 10. Derailment. Noun. When a train leaves its tracks. Also used as a metaphor for when plans or conversations go off course. Example, a scheduling derailment forced the company to push the launch back by 3 months.
Number 11. Unmistakable. Adjective. Impossible to confuse with anything else. Immediately and clearly recognizable. Example, the smell of her grandmother's kitchen was unmistakable. Warm bread and something sweet.
Number 12. To place someone. Phrasal expression. To recognize someone or remember where you know them from. Example, his face was familiar, but I couldn't quite place him.
And your bonus phrase for today, pulse quickening, a physical expression for your heart rate increasing, usually from fear, excitement, or anxiety. Example, she felt her pulse quicken as she opened the envelope.
13 total if you count the bonus, which you should. These are all real, natural, commonly used words that you will encounter again and again in English media, writing, and conversation.
Use 3 of them in a sentence or conversation before the end of the week. That is your one task.
Just 3, that is all.
And that is the episode, The Passenger Who Never Existed, a mystery, a lesson, and 13 words you will not forget.
Thank you for listening to Fluent English Podcast. If today's format was useful for you, share it with someone who is also learning English. They will thank you for it.
Find a mystery story. Get absorbed and learn through the story, not in spite of it.
See you next time.
Take care.